So we're going back to the Kenny and Ginger storyline.
Yeah, we're gonna cover that first.
So it pans in on the studio mixing board, and it's obviously a big disco party. So yeah, there's a
disco party with balloons, though.
With balloons. I did notice the background, all that flagstone.
Yeah. Although I wonder, in a recording studio, would you want to have a rock wall? That would be good.
Anyway.
It's a cool scene, right?
It was definitely a cool scene. I got all excited because I love disco.
Yeah, and I loved all the fashions. I don't know if you noticed, but they pan through and there's some people boogieing. And there's a shirt that says Oregon Records.
Oh, I didn't see that.
So I'm wondering if that's like the record company that Kenny works for, if this is a party for that. I think later on they mentioned that it was Sylvie's party, but they don't really say why.
Now, I will say this, though. When I saw Kenny's attire, I was like, isn't he dressed a little square for the party? Like, everybody's doing it's a disco party. I expected
one of those
disco shirts, but he's wearing like a blazer.
But maybe it's because he's like, the producer, and he has to like show that he's, more sophisticated than the others.
Eyebrow.
Now, did you see what Sylvie was wearing? This is the style that Madonna was using for her Confessions on a Dance Floor. Disco era.
I noticed it was shot.
So that kind of blue wrap dress with the lining. In fact, I went to a party. Were you there that night at the Roxy in New York where we went to see Madonna just do like a stage performance? Like I don't even she sang. She just danced around.
I think I was there.
And she was wearing a dress just like that.
I kind of remember this.
So I thought it was interesting that you can see that inspiration even in something simple as the Sylvie character at a disco party. I mean, I'm sure that's not where they saw that, but it's
it's of that era. Yeah, it's very indicative.
Yeah. So in the moment, Sylvie and Kenny are kind of dancing off in the corner, and Sylvie's wondering why Kenny isn't loosening up a little bit more.
And he keeps looking around.
Yeah.
And of course, then we find out that Ginger is in the house.
Right. So Kenny's like, we can't get down because my wife is here.
Yeah, my wife is here. And I got to say, Ginger she's looking so great.
Yeah.
In this part 2.
Yeah.
That's what I noticed all the way through the line. I thought, God, she looks great.
Right.
So, kudos to whoever styled her.
So Ginger interrupts them, and she's like, can we go? And Kenny's like, no, I can't go. This is a business thing. And Ginger says, oh, well, I have to work in the morning. I have class, And then Sylvie, she gives her another little dig saying, oh, that's right. You're a school teacher. Isn't that sweet?
Yeah, she was really giving the looks in this episode, too. And we'll keep going with this. Yeah. Obviously.
So Kenny's like, no, I can't go. And so he stays, and he just kind of like shimmies back over to Sylvie.
And he looked a bit drunk, I must say. He looked tipsy.
They look a little silly in this moment.
So obviously she's leaving without him. It's morning, and Kenny is being dropped off by Sylvie.
Limousine service, courtesy of Miss Sylvie.
Miss Sylvie.
They sure know how to party because it is now, I think they mentioned it 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah, they said it's 6:30 in the morning.
Right? They are up all night.
Yeah, and then you see Kenny sneaks into the bedroom, takes his shoes off, has them in his hand, and is trying to sneak in.
Right, but Ginger follows him in from behind and says, no need to do that. Yeah. I'm already awake.
And then she also mentions...
I think she asks, like, who drove you home? And he lies and says, oh, this sweet guy, Alfred.
Oh, yeah. I was like, come on, this is so obvious.
Yeah. But at any rate, she is upset because she can tell that he is lying. And she says, stop lying, Kenny. You're bad at it.
And she said something like, is this a test to see how much Ginger loves you? That kind of thing.
He's pushing the envelope. Like, again, remember the last episode with the photos showing her, like, what is he doing, right? And so she asks him, do you really want to be married? And he says, yes. And then she goes, to me?
Yeah.
And he says, yes.
She's like, I can't take this anymore. And gives him an ultimatum to just say that, prove to me that you still want to be in this relationship.
It could be later in the day, or maybe it's the following day. I'm not sure of the timeline, but it's kind of a sweet scene over at the Averys, and Laura is in the kitchen, and you can see Richard in the back. He's back on that grill.
He's back on the grill,
wearing
baby.
That same apron, and I think they're making burgers this time.
And let's not forget, this is the episode written by John Pleshette.
Right.
So
there is a nuance in this moment where he comes across a little bit more friendly or more charming. He's charming a lot of the times too, but in this episode, for the most part, he's a nice guy.
Yeah,
right?
much better than he has been in the other episodes.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And that moment where he lifts up Jason into the window and says, "Soup's on." I mean, it's so adorable. And then he does this like little funny face. So you definitely can see that was a John Pleshette moment, right? The meat of the scene, though, is Ginger asking Laura for advice about what she should do with Kenny, right? Because he's always working, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think Laura says something, well, what do you want for him? You know, don't you want him to be successful? And she says, well, yeah, I want him to be successful. I want him to work hard, but I want him to come home and have dinner with me, which is the part that's not happening.
That's not happening at all.
So Laura has an interesting take on it, though. She says, maybe you need to meet him halfway. He's already sacrificed a little. If he's a highfalutin music producer, he's moved to the suburbs for you. So maybe you need to take more interest in his work and in his life. If you bend a little, maybe he'll bend a little.
But there was a mention. Ginger said she wanted to have babies.
Yeah.
And I thought...
That's when Laura said...
Laura was like, the warning was like, well, maybe you don't want to have the babies. Right now, don't have the babies. That was the look on her face.
Yeah, I think it was a good scene. I think that Laura actually does have some experience to share in this moment. I just wonder if, you know, from the get-go, Ginger and Kenny are just not well matched because, you know, yeah, she's a school teacher. She wants to have children. She's much more of a homebody. She is not this like wild child.
No, she wants to just stay on the sack. Have you got the lyrics? Makes a woman. Did you catch that?
Yeah. No, I did. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
good. I
yeah.
want to hear it.
Oh, yeah. It's
so we're opening up back at the studio, and Sylvie is recording her song Moonshine Man, which I thought, okay, here we go, John Pleshette. Moonshine Man at the bottom of the bottle.
Exactly. That was really ironic. But it's weird because the lyrics don't really seem to have anything to do with that concept.
Right,
but
makes a woman. But
I noticed right away, I was like, what is going on with recording? It is a hot mess. She's not hitting...
She's hitting some bum notes.
Yeah, she's hitting bum notes. She's not getting the right timing. It's just like, what is going on? And then you notice after a while that Kenny's getting a little perturbed with the sound mixer there. He brings Sylvie into the console mixing center. What do you call that?
The booth.
The booth. Yeah, and he puts the band. They're some of the best musicians that money can buy, by the way. He puts them on ice, and then he goes and talks to Sylvie. He's like, "What's going on?" And she says, "Oh, I'm just so flustered with everything that's going on between you and me." And he's like, "There's no time for that. Come on, we've written all these great songs. We got to record this. We got to do this." And she says, "Well, maybe if we just rehearsed offline, you know, I could like rehearse to the backing track, just you and me."
I knew as soon as she said that, I was like, here we go. She's going in for the kill.
Just a ploy to spend more time alone with Kenny. It has nothing to do with her ability to master that song.
So obviously Ginger took the advice of Laura and decided to get more involved.
Go visit the studio.
Let's go see Kenny at the studio.
Oh, but it's bad timing.
It's bad timing.
Because the rehearsal's gone so well that Kenny and Sylvie have time to make out on the couch.
Yeah, and Kenny's got his shirt off.
Yeah.
So you just, at first you don't even know, like, are they in bed? What's going on?
Right.
But
they're on like one of those leather couches with the rivets. You know what that's called.
Chesterfield.
They're on a Chesterfield, like in the recording booth, and they're making out, and Ginger walks in, and she is just furious on her face. And then Kenny gets up and he runs after her like some dolt, leaving Sylvie behind there on the couch. And then suddenly she regains her confidence and her vocal prowess.
Yeah, she's back. I just wrote mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. She goes right back over there and she starts singing over her backing track. Perfect pitch, perfect timing. And the line there of the song is revealed as "Love makes a woman what she is." And it's a really cool edit because as she's delivering this line, the high point of the vocals goes right into the screeching of the tires as Ginger is, you know, rushing out of the car.
I saw she screeches back in her Datsun B210 again, and then Kenny follows her.
Kenny follows in right after her, but she has enough time to go inside the house and latch the door shut and lock it. So by the time that he comes in, he can't get in right away, leaving her the perfect opportunity
to destroy all the stereo equipment.
To completely destroy Kenny's wall of sound system.
It made me really sad, actually. I mean, just because I was thinking, God, that's I mean, at that time it was a dime a dozen.
I'm telling you, I totally understand what you're saying. It is just absolutely crushing to see. But at the same time, I thought, oh, wow, this is exactly what this dude deserves. And I thought that it brought a lot of high drama to this particular storyline for the finale that I wasn't really expecting. I didn't expect it to be like the stakes this high in this storyline. And what I think I kind of like about it the most, and maybe I'm getting a little esoteric here, is that wall of stereo equipment has been there the entire season, making its presence known to everybody that walks into that room. And here it is coming crashing down.
I gotta say,
It's
and
a
Ginger
metaphor.
looks so great.
Kenny busts through the door finally, and he sees all this, and she just says, "Get out! Get out now!" It was good. It was a good scene.
goodie.
It was a good scene.
And it's about time this happened.
Yeah, I agree. Long time coming. What I wrote down for the whole sequence was Sylvie gets her groove back, and so does Ginger.
Ooh.
Right?
Okay. Oh, that's good. Cute.
Okay. We need to talk about this. Okay.
Oh, it was very
This
fun.
was fantastic. Okay. The edit, this is coming back from a commercial break, and you just see, you know, I don't know where we are really. There's some gorillas. They're eating bamboo or something. It reminded me of that really great transition in the movie, The Incredible Shrinking Woman, right? With Lily Tomlin's character, Pat Kramer. She's about this tall at this point, and she falls into the sinkerator. And the guy comes in, seduces Concepcion, and distracts her and steals her away. The family thinks she's dead. They have a funeral for her. They put her shoe in the matchbox. And then it cuts to these screeching monkeys and people, like all these animals in cages. And you're like, going on, and you notice that she's now this like scientific experiment in this cage, and the whole rest of the movie is about a gorilla. So that was a weird parallel to me, that we have this abrupt change in everything's been going on, and here we are at a zoo. I thought it was a really cool
Yeah, it was a shakeup.
Yeah,
it
was
wasn't
a shakeup.
something I was normally used to seeing. I got very excited because I knew it was the original LA Zoo.
But anyway, it was really cool to see that slice of LA history represented on film. And I thought it was really cool how they used the shots of the gorillas. We'll kind of get into it a little bit more. But we have Ginger here, and she's brought her kindergarten class to see the animals at the zoo. And some of the kids are
it's
the
the
same.
same kids. I remember it's the one kid, Denny, is there. They're really sweet.
My little Susan lookalike is there too.
Yeah.
I don't know if she says any lines in this one, but I love that there's that casting continuity. Makes it feel really good because they didn't really need to do that, right?
Yeah.
You'd never know.
Could have brought any kids over there.
Yeah, exactly. But I love it because they're showing the gorillas, and then Ginger says, "Oh, what is that?
Show
what
me
kind
how
is
to
a gorilla?"
Show me what a gorilla does. And they're all going like
It was
this.
so cute. And then they throw to a shot of the gorilla, and the gorilla's like,
Looking like these dumb humans. I swear.
Kenny arrives.
Well, at first you don't know it's Kenny. Actually, from the shirt, when I saw the shirt, I'm like, oh, Kenny's wearing a gorilla
He's
mask.
wearing that shirt again. And so then Kenny's imitating the gorilla. I love it. They then cut to another shot of the gorilla just looking really pissed. You know, someone needs to give that gorilla an Emmy Award, I think.
He's probably
like,
like,
the action is so real.
These dumb humans.
Yeah.
They're trying to copy me.
So Kenny's being very charming in front of the children, right? And he's saying, "Hi, I'm Kenny Ward. I'm your teacher's husband. And we had a pretty big fight last night." And then one of the kids actually says, "Oh, did you spank her?"
Jeez.
Kenny says, "What do parents do when they have a fight? They kiss and make up." And so he says, "Who around here wants to see us kiss and make up?"
Right, and they all raise their hands, and it's just
kiss.
I mean, well, obviously, Ginger is P.O.'d, and I don't blame her.
Absolutely. And he has this box there, and he says, "Oh, this is a really pretty dress that I want Ginger to wear tonight when we go on a really fancy dinner date or whatever." Did you notice the box was Judy's? I don't know if you're familiar
I remember
with that. Remember
Judy's. Totally remember Judy's in the mall.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to know something? I used to sometimes shop. There was a time in
You shopped at Judy's?
Yeah, in the 80s they had Judy's for men.
Oh, I didn't know
They
that.
did, yeah. Kind of new wave kind of stuff. Like
Cool.
the cropped shirts with the stripes. Yeah, Judy's, but for men. Judy's for men.
I didn't know
Short-lived, but it was good.
So, he's using all these ploys to get Ginger back, and she's not happy about this. This is not cool. She says it's cruel. It's a dirty trick to use her children to curry favor in this moment, So Ginger sends the kids off to look at the giraffes. And it was a really cute moment because that little kid, Denny.
Yeah, he tries to give the gorilla mask
she's like,
over.
"No, it's okay. You can take it." Right. So they're talking, walking and talking. And Kenny's, he's apologetic. He's saying, "Wow, you smashing all of my stereo equipment was really alarming to me and really woke me up." And I think Ginger says, it's just a little too late.
Yeah,
right?
She pretty much says that she wants a complete clean slate. She's done.
Yeah.
That's it.
I need you to move out. We need to separate for a while.
Yeah.
And he's wondering, for how long? She says, I don't know. I can't even think about it. I've packed your things. I'd really appreciate it if you'd come and pick them up.
Get out.
Get out. And then I think Kenny says, but Ginger, I love you. And Ginger says, I know. And that's what makes this hurt so bad.
Yeah, it was sad.
It was sad. Kenny. No.
Well, I have hope for Kenny and Ginger, though. We'll see what happens.
For now, though, cutting to the final scene of this episode for this storyline, you see Kenny with a couple of his things, and he's at the door of Sylvie, and she's listening to some groovy music as well.
I actually was thinking, oh boy, what happens if he gets there and she's like,
oh yeah, what if she's with another guy?
And she says, what are you doing here?
She just got out of the shower, so she had
she had the two towels.
Yeah, so Kenny is pretty much in the doghouse with Ginger, and now he's arrived at Sylvie's with his tail between his leg. And he says, what, you got a room for the night?
She said, I got a room for the month.
Do I have a room for the night? You better believe it, she said. So that's kind of the end of that storyline for this episode.
And for this season.
Right? Now we're going to move back to the primary storyline, and we're going to follow up with Gary's adventures.
Gary's adventures under the pier.
Right. We left him literally at the bottom of the bottle again. So we go to the same liquor store where Gary was trying to get the bottle of bourbon there before he spent the night under the pier. And Lester Jenkins is there from 227.
Yep.
And somehow Sid has discovered this liquor store and inquires about Gary. I don't know if you noticed. Once again, an appearance of the Bradley dolls.
Oh, I didn't see any Bradley dolls.
Why would a liquor store have Bradley dolls right in front of the register? It was really weird. There's 3 of them, actually, including the green one again. Must have been some discount on Bradley dolls.
Well, maybe, yeah, they're just recycling some of the props.
There was also soccer balls on the top. I was like, what kind of liquor store would have soccer balls and dolls? But what do I know? So basically, Lester Jenkins says to Sid that Gary is a special kind of drunk because he's the kind who will suck the last sip out of a bottle, even with a gun pointed to his neck. He will chance dying in order to get that last drop.
Then he shows the gun that he actually threatened Gary with.
Wow.
Suddenly, we're back at another bar.
This was an interesting scene because as soon as Richard walks in, Gary notices him and he shouts, hey, anybody need a bad lawyer?
Yes, that was fun. Obviously, the scene starts a little rocky.
Yeah.
But by the end, you're like, oh.
Well, this was weird. I think
they're friends.
It was definitely, I think, the product of John Pleshette writing this episode.
Yeah.
I knew he was going to give himself some good stuff, and he did. I don't think he piled all the good stuff on him. I definitely think he shared the wealth around from all the different actors. But this was the scene that really did show a lot of Richard, this one and the next one. And I think what happens is Richard's like, let's get you out of here. Let's call Val. And immediately Gary's like, no. And
then he gets combative
physical.
again.
Yeah, he starts getting physical. And then Richard says, if I charge you with assault, then you're going to be in jail with the DTs.
Yep. Gary does calm down a little bit, but then Gary convinces Richard to buy him a drink.
This was weird.
It was weird. And he does it.
There was a look on Richard's face, which was like, I got to stay with this guy. I don't know where this is going to go. You can see a little bit of fear in him. And I was okay with that part. But then when we get into the second part of the scene and he's like slumped over on the bar, sloshed, I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, what happened? Well, clearly he's fallible.
Yeah.
As well, as we know.
And we needed to give Richard a moment to say Xavier Avery.
That's right. That was my line. That was the one I wrote down.
He goes into some spiel about how all the partners at his law firm have some hoity-toity 3-name moniker. And he's like, so what should mine be?
He says Xavier Avery.
Avery.
That has a ring to it or something like that.
And he's just kind of mumbling. And what's great is that he kind of is like falling asleep. And then you do notice that Gary's just going to take Richard's wallet.
And his keys.
He's going to take the money out. He's going to pay for it. And then he just leaves. And the bartender's like, hey, what about your friend over here? You know, we're closing up for the night. And Gary's like, he just leaves.
He left.
Yeah.
He's out.
Yeah. Now, another thing I want to say about these sequences here, which I thought was really cool. And again, I wonder how much this is the result of John Plechette's writing, or again, if it's the director, because I think the director does a really great job with both these episodes. There's a lot of really interesting camera shots and choices. But if you notice here, there's no music. There's no jukebox music playing in the bar. There's no soundtrack in either one of these. all you hear are sound effects outside of like sirens going by. And then these two talking. And to me, it was very like 70s, like cinema verite.
Yeah,
You know, like Mean Streets, you know?
Yeah,
And I
it
think
did feel
probably John Pleshette is like a fan of that.
Kojak.
Yeah, it's very that kind of a little bit more gritty, a little bit more, you know.
Now, can we just talk about locations really quick?
We sure can.
So I did a little bit of the research. There's this store, Mark the Carpetbagger.
Yes.
One of his relatives is still doing this.
No.
Well, there's like, you can find it online. There's like a Mark the Carpetbagger, but I think he might work out of home.
Oh.
So I guess it was like a carpet cleaning business or whatever. But they were right there in Culver City. And it's the Culver Hotel, which we've been to like a million times.
Oh, now, I'm curious.
And there's also that did you see it said the Adams Hotel?
Okay.
Now this is all changed.
Yeah. Well, I was
Most of
going to
it's
ask
changed.
you're in real estate, so you might know more about, say, the gentrification of Culver City, because it's kind of a hot spot now, especially with all these tech companies that have sprouted up around there. But it looked like kind of a dump in the episode.
Well, it used to be, Culver City was always not so great. We have a very good friend actually who grew up there, and I remember her telling me, like, she goes, Culver City, it was like they couldn't wait to get out of there when they were living there. It was just like, it was just nothing going on.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that now, if you were to go to the Culver Hotel, you would be really
there's all kinds
surprised.
of swanky stuff
Yeah,
there. Plus,
it's beautiful.
because the train goes through there too. The train stops, so they've developed like very fancy restaurants, and it's cool.
Richard does leave the bar. The bartender throws him out, and he just sort of like slumps down. He's just like thrown out like the garbage. And I think it's probably something that John Pleshette wrote for himself. Like he wanted to be, out on the mean streets of Los Angeles. It's cute. But then his car, you see his car, and it's Gary.
Yeah, and Gary, obviously he had taken the keys to the car.
Yeah.
So Gary, even though he's loaded,
Yeah.
takes Richard and puts Richard in the car. But anyway.
So we then return home to the Avery house. I love the shot. Gary, right?
Yeah.
Hoisting this little man over his shoulder and this big tall guy with this little short guy on his shoulder. That was pretty funny. And he's like a bull in a china shop, just like knocking over everything because he's
Does he say special
drunk.
delivery?
Oh, yeah. When Laura comes in, he says, special delivery for Xavier Avery III.
Yeah.
And Laura's like, what? But she can
What?
tell, obviously, what's going on here. She can tell that Gary's completely drunk.
She's like, what have you done
But
to him?
she doesn't know what's wrong with Richard.
Yeah.
And Gary says, oh, come on. It's just a 3 drinks. I don't know, maybe 4.
She offers to make coffee, and then Gary says something. Do you know what coffee does to your body?
That was definitely a John Pleshette line,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Totally.
Given to Gary. And immediately Gary sees, the liquor cabinet right there. He wants what's behind door number 1.
Door number 1 is some booze.
Yeah. So
and,
he's asking, like, how do you open this thing? And Laura says,
it's on the keychain.
right. So
which
she's kind of stalling
You
him.
have the key. It's
Yeah.
on the car key. So, of course, he's looking for the keys. And meanwhile, she calls Valine and says, Gary's over here.
Right. So while he's kind of stumbling through, like, wondering where this is, then Valine walks in
Magically.
and immediately sees the keys are still in the lock in the door. So he pulls those out, and he's, again, trying to fumble through this.
This starts getting bad.
Yeah. So while he's like trying to say like this key doesn't work, and Laura's like, yes, it does. Yes, it does. And if you notice also that Val's like, stop. You don't need to do this. And Laura's just like, just let him do it. He's like way out of control right now. She can tell. And so in the process of all this,
He
smacks Val with his
Backhands her.
hand by accident, right?
Yeah, but I was so bummed at this point.
Something like this had to happen, right? Because you have to have this drama keeping ratcheted up. He's already like stolen a bottle of beer from the bum or whatever. Now we need to have something that is very personal happen that shows that this activity is ramping up.
Yeah. Now, I think right after this, he smashes the
Right.
door with his hand
Right.
and cuts himself. And
Yeah.
Valine's like, you're bleeding.
It was crazy too. I thought Gary looked like a little child here when he bursts through and he breaks the glass and he gets the bottle and then he starts gulping it. And he even burps like halfway through. It's like almost like a little baby having a little bottle of milk.
So we got a siren.
This is the disturbance that Kenny and Ginger are being interrupted by when they're having their talk at 6:30 in the morning. Similar to what we were just talking about with the Ginger and Kenny storyline, this is one of these like moments that's really ratcheting up the drama for the finale. And it's the EMTs who have arrived to grab Gary, who's, was his arm? I think it's his arm.
It's like his arm.
Yeah.
Kind of over here.
And so he's saying, you guys, you can follow in your car to the hospital. And then when he is released, you can pick him up. And Sid's like, what? You can't release this guy.
He's been drinking like for 3 days.
He's an alcoholic. And I'm thinking, oh, Sid, now you understand what an alcoholic is?
Yeah, that's just after handing him a drink.
Right.
At the beginning of part 1.
So the EMT says, no, that's not how it works. And Sid says he needs treatment. He needs help. And the EMT says only the patient can commit himself into that type of treatment unless he had tried to kill himself, commit suicide. And then Laura,
she has an idea. She looks over. She says, oh, he did try to commit suicide.
She bends the truth, saying that him smashing the window happened after he had drank the bourbon.
Right.
So then the EMT kind of goes over to Val and is looking for verification. And Val looks back over to Laura and they say, yeah, this is what needs to happen so that we can get him monitored for the next 72 hours. I thought it was really cool that Laura made that decision in that moment.
Well, if you remember, didn't Valine help Laura out a few episodes ago?
That's correct. That is correct.
So,
Yes, that is correct.
You gotta,
this is payback from the
live.
Payback
from the live. So we're at the hospital. We see Gary waking up out of his stupor. He's got a bandage on his arm, and he sneaks out of the bed, and he goes up to the door, and he tries to open it like he's going to get out, and it's locked.
And he's like, what is going on? What is going on? And he starts kind of shouting, get me out of here.
Yeah, we see Val on the other side of the door. She's been sleeping.
She wakes up, and she can kind of hear it, and she's sort of panicking. And then this doctor stops her and says, well, actually, no, I think before you see him, I should talk to him first. And so then she opens up the door and Gary says, who are you?
And she is Charlotte Kramer.
Dr. Charlotte Kramer. What did you think of her?
Played by Diana Douglas.
Oh, yes. Did you know that she is the wife of Kirk Douglas?
No.
And the mother of Michael Douglas.
OMG.
She was a trip.
I really liked her. She was really
she had like frosted lipstick on, I think, a little bit. And she was very commanding.
She was not taking anything from anyone. She was very like...
She tells Gary what's happened, right? That he's been committed because he had tried to kill himself.
Right.
And Gary's like, what? No, that's a lie. That didn't happen. And he's like, I want to see Val. I want to see Val. And Dr. Kramer says, you can see Val, but I'm just warning you, keep it calm. And then under his breath, Gary mutters, a lady shrink.
Yeah, I heard that.
Gary!
A lady shrink.
Well, we can blame it on the booze, I guess. Anyway, so then Valine's outside and he sees her and visibly there's a bruise.
Right. And he's like, oh my God, what happened to your eye? And then it's like, he realizes he gave her the black eye.
Yeah. So he apologizes, but then he immediately gets into, serving himself again. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. Let's go.
He's like, I'll quit or, whatever.
And Val's like, no. You don't understand. You are here to detox. And then he says, well, they think that I tried to kill myself. It's a lie. And then Val says, what's the difference between slitting your wrists and drinking yourself to death?
Well, doesn't he start going apeshit after this?
Yeah, he does. I got to get out. I got to get out.
Start turning a wild person.
And he's just like, get me out of here. Get me out of here. And so all the orderlies have to come and sort of wrestle him and put him into the locked room again. And I have to say, Ted did a really, really good job in this sequence. And actually, I would say all the sequences from here on out in this episode, I feel like he played a sort of trapped man in detox facing these decisions better maybe than he played the drunk, although he did a good job there too. I just felt like it was much more rich in this
I had
scene.
some tears, I actually got tears. I was like,
I think Gary is very handsome, but when he kind of morphs his face, I mean, so many times you'll see him like when he's laughing, his face is just so expressive.
Yeah.
I think even when he is scared or hurt, that face has a lot of expression in it. And I definitely thought it was really touching.
Thanks, Ted Shackelford.
Ted Shackelford. Good job. Later at home, Val is on the phone and she is making some arrangements or trying to figure out what are the next steps in this treatment for Gary and his alcoholism. How is he going to deal with this? Is he going to go to AA? Is he going to have personal therapy? And Karen is there.
Oh, I love it. Karen looks so great. like she's got these really big bunches and this kind of brownish, cool dress shirt thing. I don't know. She looked really good on this scene because she hasn't had much in this part two.
She doesn't have much in this finale, I would say. But, you know, we've seen a lot of her this season. But anyway, she's there to tell Val that, give her kind of a boost of confidence that she's going to be able to get through this.
And she did the right thing by saying that he was
getting him committed.
Yeah.
And then I think she said that Sid had done some research and he found out that this Dr. Kramer is the best. And so I think in that moment, Val feels a little bit better, a little bit more.
I think that even Karen said that Val was very brave as well. So we got to keep Valine propped up and feeling strong because this is a difficult situation.
Right. And again, here we see that bond between Karen and Val growing once again.
Yeah. What did you think of this next scene, the Jack in the Box? What did you get from that? I mean, let's just talk about symbolism then. Is it he's reverted back to being a child?
That's kind of what I felt too, because he was in this children's room and he's like,
that's right. He's in the children. They didn't have another room for some reason, so they stuck him in like the kids' ward, child wallpaper.
It's interesting because that's what I had said in that other scene where he gets the bottle of bourbon out of the cabinet after he's hurt himself and he goes right to it like a little baby sucking on a bottle. It's also a symbol of, I guess, playing with something for so long until you get hit.
Right.
Now you're screwed and you got to deal with it, you know? It's an interesting scene because Gary is being filmed by a hospital camera.
Yeah, CCTV.
That is transmitted to the other room where Valine is.
Yeah, and Valine is watching.
She's feeling uncomfortable. She's like, I feel like a peeping Tom.
Yeah, she's with the doctor, and so they're watching him. And then
Dr. Kramer's kind of telling him, as an alcoholic, there is no cure for this. You can't just say, oh, I'm done, I'm going to be fine. There is no cure, and that all they can do is arrest the alcoholism. And she tells him that he's a violent drunk that, if left unchecked, would kill to get a drink, which is crazy, right?
He was manic for sure.
He certainly was. I mean, over the course of several days on this crazy binge that he was going on, and who knows where that would stop, right? And I think that's what everybody's concerned about here. Yeah, you can be a functioning alcoholic unless you are the type of alcoholic that is just so violent that you can't even function. And this is kind of where this guy is headed. So this is an interesting tactic.
So we have the CCTV where Valine is watching Gary, and then the doctor is going to do this experiment to show Valine.
To show Valine, but also to shock Gary, right?
Yeah.
To get it on record in a way how bad of an alcoholic he is.
So they offer him the choice, right? It's whiskey,
like a little mini,
or your wife.
Right. I think it literally is, a little bottle of whiskey or a dime to call Val. Right? There's a funny little line. Gary says, oh, hey, if we share this, there won't be a lot left. And then Dr. Kramer says, well, there's not a lot left to your marriage either, is there?
Ooh, burn.
Yeah, there's another burn.
She's another burn.
Noted. So what's crazy is that she's goading him. The pressure's mounting. And then finally he takes the whiskey.
It's crazy. He takes the whiskey and then he drinks it.
And Val's watching in the other room
and then
can't believe it.
He screams, it's tea.
Yeah.
I was like, ha ha.
He was tricked. He was tricked, but it showed what his motivation currently is.
I know.
And what bad shape
he is. And I felt very sad for Valine at that point.
And of course, he has no idea at this time that she's seen this.
Yeah. Drama. So this was, again, artsy kind of shot. You see the billiard table and the pool cue breaking up the balls.
In a way, this is a little bit of a breakthrough for Gary in a way, because he's finally getting the scoop on AA and how it can work for you.
Right. And he's at the rehab, obviously, and now he's not locked in the room anymore.
Yeah.
So he's engaging with other people.
And he's meeting
Kahil. We meet Kahil, who reveals that he's an ex-professional basketball player.
Right.
Who had a drinking problem.
And he says that in his experience, you cannot hide from alcoholism once you admit that you're an alcoholic. And that is why it is so important to start the AA meetings and take that step. And he says that once you're able to do that, then everything just becomes so much easier and things will fall into place. Yeah, Gary may be listening, but he's not really hearing fully.
But he's not quite ready. I think he's
But at least he knows that there is a meeting later on that day, I think. And then, because Sid comes in, right? And so he introduces him. And then Sid is wondering how he's doing. He's just checking in with him. And then Gary says, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm out of detox. I mean, do I look like an alcoholic?"
And Sid says, yes.
No, that's not what he says.
Well, he says something to that effect.
I don't really know what an alcoholic looks like. Right?
But
what he does say is that he knows that alcoholism is not something that you can control, and that alcoholism controls you. And so as Gary is again kind of saying, "Oh, I don't have time for this stuff," or whatever, I'm fine, then Sid threatens him.
Yeah, he gives him the ultimatum. If he doesn't clean up his act, the VP position will not be available to him. So
he can't take the chance on someone who is this volatile, right? Yeah. So in that moment, magically then, Gary's like, "Oh, well, Sid, there's a meeting tonight, and I'm going to go. It's going to be my first AA meeting, and it's at 9:00, and wives are encouraged to attend, so please tell Val."
And Sid is stoked. He's so happy, right?
Now, I'm curious, because he says something like, "Why didn't you tell me first?" And then Gary says something like, "Oh, well, you're very quiet, but once you get started talking, I can't get you to shut up." And I'm thinking, was Gary convinced by the threat in that moment? Because there's like this look on his face.
I don't know. I'm not quite sure. It seemed
clearly, as the episode progresses, he didn't have any intention of going to the meeting.
Right. He's probably he's just trying to
get Sid off his back.
Yeah, get Sid off the back, and maybe Valine will let him out of the hospital. Who knows? A little later on, there's a party going on at rehab, and Cahill mentions that when he gets out of here, he's going to go have a fat burger. And I was just got all excited because, the original fat burger was just located around the corner from here.
That is true.
Now, I don't know. Probably in 1980, there had to be more than one.
More. Yeah.
But anyway, that was cute. I got excited.
So there's a cake and there's a basketball on it because he's a basketball player, and they're celebrating because Cahill has finished his program and he is going to be released from this rehab center. And then you see Gary in the background, and they're like, "Does anybody want any cake or whatever?" The party is so busy that Gary takes this as an opportunity to spring himself free, or at least attempt to, right? Yeah. So he goes into Cahill's room and finds his suitcase packed with all of his clothes.
And he grabs a jacket, a blazer.
He grabs some pants. He grabs the shoes. He stuffs them in. And he's creeping around. And then he sees some clerk's desk, and there's a purse on the floor. So he takes some money out of the purse.
And then he's fishing around, finds some keys.
Yeah.
And so then he heads to the door, and magically it's the keys
to the chains that are holding the door closed.
So he unlocks.
I like this scene. I thought it was kind of cool. Again, it felt like maybe an influence from John Pleshette and kind of the style of maybe movie or TV show that he likes, because there's some really great riveting music in this. And I think it gave this episode a little bit more of a suspense in the later act of the episode, right? Because, once someone gets into rehab, is there really that much excitement going on? Well, in this case, there was, because we still had an opportunity for Gary to bust out, go to another bar perhaps, and see what happens next. And we will. So Sid runs right over to Val's with the great news that Gary is going to go to the AA meeting that night.
And everybody's ecstatic.
Well, kind of. Val is very suspicious. She's like, "Really? Are you sure you heard that right?" Because I guess she had spoken to Dr. Kramer, and Dr. Kramer had told her that Gary was nowhere near this step in his progress to admit to going to AA. So she's very suspicious, but I think Sid does give her the information, and he says that, he had threatened Gary to fire him unless he gets his act together. And Val was kind of surprised by that a little bit. She's just suspicious, even when Sid sort of wagers that, he's going to lick this.
Yeah, he sounded like he was 100% sure he was going to.
He still doesn't know alcoholics after all, do you, Sid?
No.
But Val knows.
Now, we see Gary in the taxi.
Yeah, surprisingly, he hasn't gone to a bar. He's returned home to the cul-de-sac.
Back to the cul-de-sac.
Yes, and he's there to see Val. And Val is shocked, what are you doing here?
Yeah, why are you here?
He's dressed in this nice suit. She's like, "Where did you get these clothes?" He's like, "I'll tell you later." And he's kind of overselling his progress here. Mm-hmm. But Valine, already having spoken to Sid, wonders, what about the meeting tonight? Aren't you going to go to the meeting tonight? And he's just like, next week. Don't worry about it. And then Gary's like, yeah, I'm going to be fine. I got this. No problem whatsoever. And Valine says, no. You cannot keep kicking this can down the road. If they go back to life as is and he, stops drinking on his own, when will that next life event happen that causes him to drink? Will it be a promotion? Will it be when they decide to have another baby? Right.
And I thought what was so good was you actually saw Valine really get strong, because in the first part of the episode, she was very
the whole first part of this finale, she's been very accommodating.
Yeah.
And I wonder if part of that is because it is a new remarriage, right? They just kind of got remarried. And so she doesn't maybe want to be too hard on him, and she wants to keep him in her life.
But now getting to this point, you would have to be hard.
Well, she realizes that she can't be living her life waiting for the deck of shoe to drop. Right? Yeah. She says, I can't live like that, and I won't live like that, as much as she loves him. She then tells the big reveal to Gary.
Yeah, the big reveal is she actually saw him choose the whiskey over the marriage. So she's not playing anymore.
Right.
And he's kind of shocked. But
and he probably feels bad in that moment, and he probably feels like, oh gosh, I really need a drink. And so what does he do? He takes money or the keys out of her purse, right, on the floor, I think, and he takes the car and he speeds off.
But meanwhile, even before he leaves, the phone rings, and she knows intuitively that it's probably the calling to say he escaped.
Right, exactly.
So it was all happening all at the same time.
Right,
so
and
she knows.
She says to Gary, we need help. You need help. This is not going to solve itself.
But then he gets in the Pinto and screeches
oh my
off,
gosh.
hitting all the garbage cans.
This was like a video game, right?
And it was the old...
How many trash cans can I hit?
He was hitting all the Oscar the Grouch trash cans, the kinds that we would have had.
500 points.
We would have had those, when you were a kid, those old metal galvanized steel.
Valine goes after him, and she starts picking up the trash cans. And then Karen and Sid come out. And, this is a sweet moment here. Val says, I'm going to go to that meeting alone because I need some answers as to how to deal with this.
Yeah, I know I've heard this before, too, from people in our lives that we know who have had addiction problems, that sometimes if that person isn't going to go, maybe you need to go just to understand it. That was a powerful message that she is going to learn more about, how to hopefully cure him.
All right, so Gary now is at a bar.
Back in another bar.
This is another bar where there's no music, no soundtrack, or nothing. So it's just a close-up shot of Gary in front of a highball.
Yeah. I was looking, was that a whiskey, water, or what was it?
Gin and tonic, maybe.
Oh, okay. I don't know what it was.
I like a gin and tonic. Or
I was looking, I was thinking, it looks like
Tom Collins.
Tom Collins, maybe. Yeah, something.
So there's a dime there. So he's got the dime and the drink. And I think he goes over to the phone booth.
Yeah, and then that's a nice reference back to that other scene, isn't it?
Right. He goes to the phone booth and he tries to call Val, and she's not there. And I don't think that he knows that she went to the AA meeting necessarily, but I think what he thinks it as is, oh, well, I've kind of lost her support right now. Yeah. I don't have her to fall back on. So he returns back to the drink, and in that moment, he just kind of like spins the coin. And again, like you say, it's a callback to that other scene of making that choice.
And then he walks away from the drink.
Right.
Probably that old bum who was under the pier before. Hopefully he came in and grabbed it back.
So there's a voiceover carrying you into the final scene of the episode and the season. And it is a woman that we've not seen before. And she is telling her story about how she almost relapsed after 6 years of sobriety. Break. And so she's talking about this, and you see Val is listening. She's in the meeting as well, kind of listening in. I think she did a good job. The actress's name was Ellen Blake. I thought she was a groove.
I liked her, too. She was a little bit of a scene stealer, wasn't she?
She was a scene stealer. She did a really good job. What she says is that what kind of got her back on track was that she was able to call her sponsor, and that kind of grabbed her and got her into a meeting. And so she was saved from possibly relapsing again. So I think it's a good message that Valine needed to hear. Interestingly, Cahill is leading the meeting, right?
Yep.
And so he announces, does anybody else want to speak?
Yeah.
And then at that moment.
And magically, there's Gary.
He comes through the door, and he comes up to the front of the meeting, and Cahill is happy to see him. And he says, okay, introduce yourself.
He says, my name's Gary, and I'm an alcoholic. I actually cried. I did cry. It was really like, gut-wrenching, but it was very sweet to see.
Yeah. Yeah, and Valiant
know?
is so proud. The
Yeah.
whole room starts clapping for him
Yeah.
because he's made this
You
step.
see, I'm tearing up right now.
Yes.
Oh, bless.
I think the thing is that as we start to talk about wrapping up this episode or this finale, I will say that one of the problems with having standalone episodes with storylines that are wrapped up at the end is that whenever you want to do some sort of new plot development or build on a character trait, it can often feel rushed because it wasn't something that was baked into previous episodes. I think that is evident here because Gary's spiral out of control does feel so fast.
Yeah, super fast.
You know, but I think that's probably also indicative of his level of alcoholism, right? As we have come to learning more about what the motivations are for that drinking from his family and also the history of it, and that he's a violent drunk as well. So I guess I will forgive it, but it might have been better served had they sprinkled those events out over the last couple episodes. So I don't know how far in advance they knew this was going to be the finale. Of the season.
I guess they did. And
But
did they know
maybe
whether
give Gary the promotion in the previous episode? You know what I mean?
maybe by then they knew whether they were going to get renewed or not? Too.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a good
obviously that
question.
could change the way you're going to write something.
For sure.
Because if you know, like, it's going to end, I mean, listen, haven't there been programs we've watched in the past where you hope or think they're going to get renewed, and then you
They
find out
don't.
later on they don't, and you're like,
Well, what happened?
Whatever happened?
For this particular episode, really, there's only one cliffhanger.
yeah,
And it's not Gary, you know?
It's
This
Ginger
whole thing
and
we've
Kenny.
been kind of like building up to with the Gary storyline is in a way resolved. We know that he's going to be in treatment. Whereas with Kenny and Ginger, we don't know what this future is.
Right.
So it's funny because in season 1, I mean, that's not really that big of a cliffhanger. I mean, compared to the cliffhanger of season 2, which is literally a
cliffhanger
moment. This one is pretty soft. Now, did you notice any of the differences between the writing in, say, the first episode and the second? Because they're two different people.
Well, in the second one, I felt it was a little bit more quirky in some kind of way, you know, and I know it's John Pleshette.
Yeah.
The Xavier.
Yeah.
You know, there were a couple
Yeah.
of little fun things that popped
I really
in there.
liked the LA Zoo moments. I thought those were really cool. So, yeah, I would say there was a little more clever flourishes in the second episode from a writing standpoint. I mean, in general, I would say that this topic is more serious, and so it doesn't really leave a lot of room for quips, you know?
Yeah.
And like these kind of little funny moments that we
Yeah,
would
you
often
can't
get
go too far.
from, say, Richard or from Diana, who was absent in these two episodes. And I think that's okay. We didn't really need it because it was a much more complex story involving something that's very serious and involving a character who we have not fully really explored until now, Gary. Ted Shackelford carries the lion's share of these two episodes, and I think he did a really good job. And that's partial to the writing, but also a lot of credit to himself as an actor. Overall, I think Roger Young's directing was really good. He's the same director in both. Did a good job, again, with some unusual camera angles.
Yeah, I like the
things
fact-
we haven't seen in KnotsLanding
I
before.
thought that was kind of cool.
Talking about that LA Zoo, some of the shots and the inserts there, and also the handheld under the pier.
Yeah, under the
or some of these
pier.
kind of like
That was a very
voyeuristic
strong,
shot.
and yeah, the CCTV was really cool.
Yeah.
It felt like what we were talking about, these 70s movies
yeah.
that you would see.
Yeah, the tone is much more gritty. Or
The
more-
Conversation.
Uh-huh,
Remember
yes.
that movie?
Yes, yes. So let's talk about the guest stars in both episodes. We, of course, mentioned Carolyn Conwell, who was Peggy Lee Hooker.
Peggy Lee
from
Hooker.
episode 12. I loved seeing her, and I think she was a real fun spice in that first episode. I really enjoyed both of her scenes a lot. We had Hal Williams, who played Lester Jenkins on 227, and he was in both episodes, kind of tying over Gary's journey there at the liquor store. Also in the second episode, we had the character of Dr. Kramer, right? The psychologist. Now, she was played by Diana Douglas, who, aside from being the wife of Kirk Douglas and the mother of Michael Douglas, was a prolific actress all on her own. And she actually appeared for several years, I believe, in the daytime soap opera Love is a Many Splendid Thing.
And let me guess. Is there somebody special who was in that show that we should know about?
Yes, that is where our very own Donna Mills got her start. as
Oh
well.
my God. It's just like the clock goes full circle or
Yes.
whatever you want to say, you
love
know?
it.
It's just,
She was a groove, wasn't she?
she's a total groove. Love her.
And she's been in tons of other TV shows and films. And one of her biggest film roles, according to IMDb, was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which I've seen, but it's been a really long time. But that's a beloved film. I'm sure many of you have seen it. She will be back on Knots Landing in season 2.
Oh, good.
And playing the same character, I'm assuming, because it's episode 3. So it'll probably still be Gary working through his therapy. So it'll be good to see her again. I thought she was a lot of fun.
I wrote she was a real hard ass.
She was.
I liked her.
She was.
Now, the gentleman who played Cahill is actually a former professional basketball player.
Okay.
His name is Harold Happy Hairston.
Okay.
And he also was like a character actor. So he was in Airport 79 and Police Story.
Now, of course, the main guest star of both episodes is Stevie Louise Valance as Sylvie.
Sylvie. And, she was in that other episode, too. So she's, throughout the season.
And she'll be in the next season, too. She ain't going nowhere just yet.
Not yet.
So I think it's a perfect time to maybe untie the knot of this actress. Tell us a little bit about the Untying the Knot segment, Doug.
Well, in this segment, we take deep dives into a specific production aspect of the series, or perhaps provide a bio of fan-favorite cast members. So today, it's Louise Valance.
Yes.
Would you like to elaborate?
Certainly. This is interesting because I actually did this research when she first appeared in episode 6 at the Cosmic Steeple Party. I remember not liking this character, but so far I don't not like her. I mean, of course, she's a little, she's stirring the pot.
She's a pot stirrer.
I like her so far, and I'm enjoying
it.
her performance, specifically when she's singing. I think she's really, really great. She is a Canadian actress and singer, and she started off early. I think she was probably 11 years old when she started working as an actress, singing and dancing. And I think she has a real interesting contrast to her look and her vibe than anybody else on the show, which I think makes her somewhat of a standout, right? Now, she is familiar to many people as playing the character of Jenny Ballinger on The Ropers.
I think
now, this is the second season. Probably what was going on with these shows that maybe didn't have enough ratings, they would often introduce new characters, younger characters, to sort of get in younger viewership. So you have the Ropers, who are probably in their 60s, right? And they're the landlords of this new apartment building in
they need
Cheviot
some
Hills.
new swingers living in their apartment building.
So apparently what it was is that the Jenny Ballinger character was a stowaway in some storage room. The Ropers befriend her and then allow her to live with them for at least a while. So she appears in several episodes in season 2 of The Ropers.
We're going to have to check that out.
And this would have been concurrent with Knots Landing. Another huge part of Louise Valance is actually, she's kind of changed her name to Stevie Valance. Another huge part of her career is work in children's programming. She is a voice actress who has done so many animated series. And if you look her up now, that is the first thing that is going to pop up, is her work on animated series doing voice work. But she also appeared on film in the TV series, children's TV series, Zoobilee Zoo.
Now, you see, I don't know that, but I know you do.
I do. I have to admit, when this show aired in 1986 and 1987, I was a little too old to be watching this show.
I was way too old to be watching.
I think the reason that I watched it is because it is super campy, and you need to see it. Okay. So all the characters are animals. Okay. So there's someone dressed as a fox. It's kind of like, what was the other show?
Toy Castle.
Okay, well, yes, it is kind of like Toy Castle.
Okay.
But what's the other one with Emmylou and Doug?
The New Zoo Review.
It's
so
kind of
like an updated version of the New Zoo Review.
It's definitely an updated version of the New Zoo Review. This is Zoobilee Zoo.
Right.
And so there's like a cockatoo, there is a beaver with buck teeth or whatever, and Ben Vereen stars as the mayor. But Stevie Valance, or maybe she was Louise Valance at the time, she played What's It Kangaroo in 62 episodes of this children's program.
Wow.
Ran for 2 years.
I never even heard of it.
Oh, you've got to see it. I'll show slides while we're doing this. But she plays a character that sort of is inspiring children to sing and dance, which absolutely taps into what her background and training was as an actress. So I just think it's interesting how on this show, she plays this kind of devious homewrecker. And then she goes on to be, very innocent, in all of these children programs.
Well, that's a good sign of a good actress, I guess.
It is.
Or an actor, I should say.
I would have had fun with this role if I was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, she does a great job. She's really talented.
Yeah.
Very good.
But we should definitely have a couple cocktails and maybe some edibles and watch some Zoobly Zoo sometime because like Toy Castle, which is another one that is crazy, it's got some really funny, campy moments.
Well, I'll drink to that. Bottoms up. So now let's look at the best scenes of part 1 and part 2.
Okay.
What was your favorite scene from part 1?
I have to say this is one of those rare occasions where my favorite scene was right off the bat. This was all of the Seaview Circle neighbors dancing to disco in the Fairgate living room.
Yeah.
I just thought it was hilarious.
I agree. I'm a sucker for disco, as I mentioned many, many times before. But like, I always love a disco party scene from kind of that era.
And to see them like twirling each other and Sid and Ginger doing the Charleston and even like Richard getting down. This was entertainment, kids. This was entertainment. That was my favorite from the first part. But I also really did enjoy the scenes with Peggy Lee Hooker as well. Yeah. I just thought they were really fun to see that, like her delivery, her vocal delivery, the lines she was saying to Val back and forth. I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and of course, and Val had that really good stinger back to her.
Yeah. And I will also say the last scene of part 1 that segues
the Under the Boardwalk.
That was really heartbreaking.
Yeah. I agree.
And cool camera work in that one, too.
Yeah, I like the camera work.
Yeah.
Now, what about, though, for part 2? Did you have a favorite? I had a favorite.
Well, this is the thing. This is what's so interesting, because although I think that Gary's journey in both episodes was engaging throughout, I kind of said this before. I feel like the treatment of what he's going through in the second part was handled really, really well. And I think that Ted did a great job acting in this. So I do think that part 2 had better scenes with Ted Shackelford and Gary overall, and so did Kenny and Ginger.
Yeah.
So the Kenny and Ginger stuff to me was just like super ridiculous in the first episode, and I was like rolling my eyes and just almost didn't want to watch it. But I do think it did redeem itself a little bit, this storyline in part 2. So I'm going to say that actually my favorite scenes in part 2, believe it or not, is Ginger smashing the stereo equipment.
Agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I thought that was amazing.
It's very dramatic.
And then I really loved the zoo scene as well. I thought that was really cool to see who these people are and to see what Kenny is willing to do to sort of get back on her good side. And then realize that, again, she's taking a stand and saying, no, this is a dirty trick, what you're doing here. And to have it staged at the zoo with the kids who are so charming. And then also those cutaways with the gorilla. I thought it was great.
Well, I liked that scene too. But what I really liked, the CCTV scene with Gary. And I mentioned it before. It's like a throwback to those kind of 70s Kojak or Serpico or whatever.
I did really like Ted's work in those first early detox scenes.
So for me, I'd probably say like the destruction of the stereo equipment in the Ginger Kenny storyline was my favorite. And then in the bottom of the bottle, that the hospital would be my other favorite. So those would be in part 2.
I think we've kind of covered everything. So I think at this point, it's time to come in for a landing on both episodes to get right down to the Lotus Point and find out just how highbrow or lowbrow these 2 episodes were individually. And then we're going to tally everything up for the entire season and find out the BROWMETER rating for season 1 of KnotsLanding. I'm so excited to finally get to this.
Yep. So get your
Hopefully
calculator.
I can do the math.
Well, no, get a calculator.
Oh, right. Okay, smart. So what did you think for episode 12?
Okay, so for episode 12, do you want both of these at the same time?
Why don't you do your 12, I do my 12, you do your 13.
All right, so my 12, I put a 4 between 1 and 5.
Okay.
Maybe because there was so much back and forth, though, in the 2 storylines. It did feel a little rushed, which is why I'm not giving it a 4.5 or 5.
I'm giving it quite a bit lower, to be honest.
Oh, really? Okay.
I just felt that the Kenny and Ginger stuff in that first episode, it was tough to get through some of it. It was just out of left field. I felt like the acting just felt really wooden, especially in that scene where Kenny has the photos of Sylvie that he's showing to Ginger after she asks him if they're having an affair and he says no, and then she just goes back to her magazine. I'm like, what? And then all the stuff with the bars and the drinking. I mean, all that stuff's kind of it's a fun romp, but it's not really like highbrow. But it's not intended to be. So I gave this one a 3.25.
Oh, I didn't know we could give it a 0.25.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've been doing that.
Okay.
I've been doing the quarters.
Okay, all right. I didn't know that.
All right, so now what about for part 2?
So I would say for part 2, I gave it a little higher. I gave it a 4.5.
All right.
So for me, that's about the highest I think I've ever given anything.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because I'm giving this one the highest I've ever given one, 4.75.
Wow. Okay,
Right?
I'm impressed.
I mean, this was high.
I didn't know we were allowed to do the
Oh, yeah.
increments. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll stick by my guns.
I mean, yeah, I think that second episode with the way they kind of have these different tones, right, with the drinking in the bar without any sound, I thought that was really cool. And just everything in the detox ward was really good. I just think it was really solid. And the whole thing is very serious. So it was highbrow through and through. Good job, John Pleshette. I'm looking forward to any more of the episodes that you're writing. And I'm actually looking forward to any other episodes that this gentleman directs. Hopefully there's some more in the future.
Now, let me ask you a question, though. How are we going to calculate all these?
Well,
do you know how to divide?
we're going to let technology do it. All right, we're back from our little algebraic session where we're using the Pythagorean theorem to find out.
Yeah, we figured out.
I was going to just say real quick, though, curious if you could guess, what was the lowest rated episode this season?
Was it
for us on the BROWMETER?
Was it the watch along? The first, it was the one, the beach. Land of the Free
has the lowest score,
but I really enjoyed it. It's just that it wasn't highbrow, but it was really enjoyable.
So, okay, drum roll, please. We have the first season of KnotsLanding, the ultimate BROWMETER score for KnotsLanding season 1.
Between 1 and 5.
Between 1 and 5 on the BROWMETER. Lowbrow is 1 and high is 5. It's 3.75. Not bad.
That's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
I'm sure it's going to go up from here.
You think? I think it's going to go down. Because season 1 is very episodic where the storylines are tied up. I think in a way you're going to get higher quality scores because it's like that episode with David Crane, or there was the one with Richard where he was trying to borrow money. We always felt those were so jam-packed with so much stuff because it almost could be like a small mini movie.
I guess it's like higher stakes because you have to wrap it up. So maybe it's going to be
It's like little tied-up things. Where going forward, we're going to have a lot of
the
looser
story
ends.
carries on.
So,
we'll see what happens.
So,
soon enough.
I mean, I think that's kind of where we have to end this particular episode. We thank you for hanging out with us for probably 2 hours of this episode.
Yeah.
So, Doug, is there anything else you want to add?
I'd just like to say have a great holiday if you're celebrating any holidays.
Oh, yeah. This was the closest that we could get to like
we
a
kept
Christmas
it a little,
backdrop.
little festive. So, anyway, have a great holiday. We look forward to seeing you.
Yes. And don't drink and drive like Gary. Don't be knocking over any garbage cans.
Don't drink to forget.
Right. Just drink to have fun responsibly and not to get drunk. Right? We've learned this.
Yes, we have learned this.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on this season 1 of Seaview Circle, and we'll see you then back on the sack.